Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Cambio. I'm one of the co-chairs of the California Lawyers Association's Health and Wellness Committee. We're an all-volunteer committee committed to providing programming about health and wellness for attorneys to try to make you happy, healthy, and wise. We're very, very, very fortunate to have Dr. Joel Fuhrman here to speak with us today. You'll have an opportunity to list questions for him in the chat box. Please wait till maybe 45 minutes into the presentation because your questions might get answered along the way, and he'll try to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. One of our committee members is Gary Letourneau. He's very passionate about diet and how it can reverse various health problems. And he's here to introduce Dr. Joel Fuhrman for us. Take it away, Gary.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Thank you very much, and welcome, Dr. Fuhrman. I am pleased and really very honored to welcome and have Dr. Fuhrman with us. A little background, he is a board-certified family physician and a nutritional researcher who specializes in preventing and reversing chronic disease through nutrition. To put this into perspective, in the United States, we have the lowest life expectancy in the industrialized world and the highest healthcare costs. You might say, well, why is that? And I happen to be a member of Kaiser Permanente, which is a very large healthcare system here in San Diego. And I have all the doctors that I've come into contact with are very nice, they're bright. None have been trained in nutritional science. And when they come up with chronic disease and the symptoms of chronic disease, heart disease is an example, what they're able to do is offer prescription drugs or surgery, which is an absolute tragedy. And Dr. Fuhrman has shown that these chronic diseases are preventable and reversible with lifestyle changes. And he is one of the leading people among the medical community. Some of his books have been absolutely amazing. I first met him, so to speak, by reading his book called Eat to Live, and which was a national bestseller. I've also read his book, Eat for Life. He has a book on heart disease. And as I said, we are phenomenally fortunate to have this gentleman with us. Dr. Fuhrman, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Appreciate you all joining me today. Looking forward to our talk and the questions that you're going to be able to present to me after the talk. So I'm going to make some radical claims here, and I'm making this claim that says that we can win the war on cancer, and you don't have to have a heart attack or a stroke in your life. So I'm saying here, to be more accurate, that we can prevent over 90% of cancers through nutritional excellence and more than 98% of all heart attacks. So we're going to really go through this in detail and give you the opportunity to get exposed to this idea, this concept of nutritional excellence, which I call the nutritarian diet. And the nutritarian diet is based on a portfolio of foods that have potential ability to prevent cancer and to protect your endothelial lining from developing atherosclerosis and forming clots and damaging your heart. And I'm claiming that if you eat so healthfully, you age slower, you live much longer, and you don't have the tragedies befall you that befall almost all other Americans. I often lecture to physician audiences, and I start out by asking them how many of them have been shot by a bullet or stabbed by a knife. And like hardly anybody in the 1,000 people in the room raises their hand. And I say, how about you or your family with a heart attack or a stroke or a cancer diagnosis? And all their hands go up, right? And I'm saying it. And are you saying that with these modern advances in nutritional science and the scientific studies we have available today, you are going to continue to live in that dangerous zone, in that zone of risk, of fear, where everybody around you gets sick when you don't have to have that happen to you? So that's what this is about today. So we're talking about some basic principles we're going to go over first about what causes disease and what prevents disease. And number one, we know that there's no such thing as a healthy overweight person, that there's no overweight people lived in human history. It's all been in the last, let's say, 1,000 years on the planet, and that we've had any overweight people been able to get enough calories to become overweight. And only in the last, you could say, 100 years that we started to see overweight develop significantly. Only in the last 50 years we've had the majority of population being overweight. And now we have, by conventional authorities, they claim 77% of Americans are overweight as measured by a BMI above 25. And I say that, well, optimal lifespan occurs with BMIs below 23. That means the optimal BMI for lifespan purposes for a male is between 19 and 22, and for a female is between 18 and 21. And if we use 23 as the BMI demarcation line between normal weight and overweight, then we classify 89% of Americans as being overweight. So when you are overweight, your cells have more fat on the membranes. The uptake of insulin is inhibited because it distorts the insulin receptor function, and it makes a person insulin resistant. When you're overweight and insulin resistant, the beta cells have to produce more insulin to get the sugar out of the blood when you eat a meal. And that excess insulin, of course, shortens lifespan, is a primary fat storage hormone, promotes angiogenesis, and permissively allows cancer cells to replicate. So excess insulin or insulin resistance is a hallmark of a shorter lifespan, and lower circulating levels of insulin and insulin sensitivity is the hallmark of all centenarians and healthy, long-lived people. So the start of this is my basic principle is that your healthy life expectancy, how long you live and how healthy you live in your later years, is proportional to the nutritional bang per caloric buck in your life, that you eat throughout your life. How many nutrients, micronutrients do you get per calorie? In other words, macronutrients containing calories like fat, carbohydrate, and protein. I'm saying Americans eat too much fat, they eat too much carbohydrate, and they eat too much protein. Those are only the three sources of calories. We've got to eat less calories, but simultaneously, as eating less calories, we have to take in more micronutrients like phytochemicals and antioxidants from colorful plants that arm the immune system with protection against cancer and reduce inflammation and prevent atherosclerosis. So I'd like you to either write down or memorize these next 5 words, because this is the only proven methodology to slow aging and live longer. And these 5 words are moderate caloric restriction in the context of micronutrient excellence. I'll say it one more time, moderate caloric restriction with micronutrient excellence, which means we have to get our nutrient needs met without consuming excess calories. And if you're eating empty calories, you can't do that. You have to know the nutrient density of foods and how to, stack your diet so you're getting a lot of nutrients without consuming excess calories, right? Because extra fat doesn't only raise insulin resistance and insulin production. So I'm saying all overweight people are pre-diabetic, whether their sugars in the bloodstream start to go up or not. For the years of producing too much insulin, eventually the beta cells poop out a little bit, and pre-diabetes, and then eventually diabetes develops, but the damage is occurring even before you even get pre-diabetes, right? And of course, fat on the body secretes pro-inflammatory compounds, shuts off immune surveillance, and what means your body can't search for abnormal cells and remove them. And extra fat also activates the aromatase system, which makes for higher production of estrogen, increasing risk of breast and prostate cancer. So we know that being overweight is not a cosmetic issue. It's a life-threatening issue to be eating more calories than we require. Throughout human history, body fats of humans have always been below 15% for males and below 25% for females. And we see that when you have body fats above 15% for a male, we start to see these measurable parameters of risk start to go up. And the same thing when body fat gets above 25% for a female, we can measure the inflammatory markers, the cholesterol goes up, the amount of plaque in the blood vessels start to increase, insulin resistance increases, estrogen production increases. We can measure your risks in your blood in a dose-dependent manner as your weight gets higher and higher. So we're talking here about when you consume less calories, of course, your body slows down the aging process because your engine runs slower. And when you consume more calories, all those calories don't go to make you overweight when you consume extra calories you don't need. You can be consuming extra calories and not even be overweight or that overweight. Because when you consume extra calories you don't need, it turns up your body temperature. It increases your respiratory quotient, calories burned through breathing. It increases thyroid function to burn the extra calories. In other words, your body runs its engine at a higher rate, so you age faster from the extra calories. So if you're 10 pounds overweight, you don't just eat 100 pounds extra 100 calories extra a day. Because remember, about 350 days in the year, about 3,500 calories make a pound of body fat. If you ate an extra 100 calories you didn't need every day after a year, would you gain 10 pounds? No, because the extra calories would go to speeding up the metabolism, making you age faster. You'd only gain an extra 5 pounds for that year's work. So we're saying even if you're a little bit overweight, you're eating way over your caloric needs. It's being the artist scientist of your own body's needs and hitting that target in a narrow window to maintain your most favored weight that slows down your metabolic rate, slows down the aging process, and really is most effectively to prevent cancer, right? Because when you slow down the aging process by having a high nutrient, lower caloric intake, then you enhance the cellular mechanisms which enable the cell to remove toxins and to heal DNA damage and to have maximum immune function. Because we have the cells our body's immune system and our body's DNA can suppress genetic abnormalities that might cause a problem. In other words, we suppress genetic alterations that are not in your favor. And also the body can have enhanced immune surveillance of abnormal cells. So the body already is a cancer defensive, miraculous machine and removes toxins and protects our cells when it's fed properly. So slowing the metabolic rate is favorable. See, most Americans think we have to find some gimmicks to speed up our metabolic rate so we can eat more food and not get fat. And I'm saying it's the opposite is true. We're trying to eat less food to purposely slow down our metabolic rate so we can eat less food and not get too thin. We want to maintain good musculature and we want to hit our caloric window with our nutritional needs. But it's better if we could do that, requiring less food, not requiring more food, right? So we're talking here about this concept of when your diet is high in micronutrients. And the foods that are highest in micronutrients are vegetables, right? They have the most nutrients per calorie, especially green vegetables. When you meet your need for micronutrients, it naturally suppresses your appetite. So the appetite in your stomach and the appestat in your brain work together, and you desire less food the more nutrients you eat. And we're talking here also about G-BOMBs. You can write down this acronym, G-BOMBs, BOMBS, which are the 6 foods that have the most scientific references to show protection against cancer. That's all those are. And the G-BOMBs stand for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds, right? One of the secrets to long life is eat seeds at every meal, like flax seeds or sesame seeds or chia seeds. But in any case, we're talking here about meeting our caloric needs, right? And eating a light and earlier dinner, so we're not going to bed on a full stomach. So when we're lying flat at night, the body can devote its energies towards healing and repair and not digesting. Because the body detoxes, removes metabolic waste, and we have waste products produced by the bodies are called metabolic or endogenous wastes. Waste products or toxins from the external world, like smoke and pollution and chemicals, are called exogenous wastes. And we have some mixture of endogenous and exogenous wastes, and our body eliminates that when we're not eating food, and we're not digesting. When we're digesting, the liver's busy doing something else. It's storing glycogen, it's breaking down stuff, right? So it's when we're not digesting. And this occurs over this long period of when we're not digesting during sleep at night. And we're supposed to be sleeping and resting and detoxing when we're sleeping and resting and detoxing, which means not digesting food. So we want to finish digesting before we go to sleep at night, right? So a lighter and earlier dinner enhances lifespan. This moderate caloric restriction, we're talking about eating healthfully, eating healthy foods, and being the artist scientist of our own body's needs. So we're trying not to consume extra calories, but just meet our needs with the perfect window without overeating. And we know that this degree of not extreme caloric restriction, we're not talking about being anorexic, we're talking about having low body fat and having good musculature, right? Is a major parameter of slowing aging and increasing the body's ability to remove toxins that could build up and cause cancer, right? So we're talking here about being healthy means not eating junk food, not eating processed foods, and eating and paying attention to putting foods in our mouth that give us good health, great health, right? Speaking of that, we have to speak about foods that destroy our health, like 2S plus O, which is obviously sugar, salt, and oil, because we could eat a little fat from nuts and seeds, but if you take 200 calories from nuts and seeds, those 200 calories are absorbed over 4 hours. And it's about so 1 ounce of nuts and seeds, about 175 calories absorbed over 3 or 4 hours. You're getting about 2 calories or 1 or 2 calories a minute. When you pour oil on your food, you're absorbing those calories within 5 minutes, from the lips to the hips in 5 minutes flat. And you spike a level of calories up in the blood, which is the lipemic load of that meal. You see, Americans get their fats from animal fats and oils, and us nutritarians get our fats from nuts and seeds and avocado. And because we're getting our fat from a whole food, those fats are going into the bloodstream so slowly that the body can preferentially burn it for energy and not store it on fat storage and store it for fat. So how many calories can you fit in the bloodstream at one time? When you're eating vegetables and beans, don't forget, even the carbohydrate in bean is coming into your body very slowly. The carbohydrate in white bread is coming into your body with a caloric rush that equivalent if you just ate sugar right from a cup of sugar, spoonful of sugar, right? So white bread is a sugar equivalent, and the spike of sugar in the blood is called the glycemic load, and the spike of fat in the blood is called the lipemic load. Together they make for a high caloric rush in the blood, and that high caloric rush stimulates the dopamine centers in the brain, the same areas that are sensitized by cocaine or heroin or opiates, right? And it makes you dopamine insensitive, and you become habituated to the caloric rush, and you feel empty or not satisfied unless you eat a meal that has a high caloric rush. So almost all Americans are addicted to overeating calories and eating calories that are junky and high glycemic and high lipemic. I'm not calling you a food addict. I'm calling everybody a food addict. It's only 2.4% of Americans. By the way, I'm saying 89% of Americans are overweight. And out of the 11% that are not overweight, most of them are cigarette smokers or people that are ill or have digestive disorders or autoimmune diseases or depression or occult cancers or some problem keeping them thin. It's only 2.4% of Americans that are a normal weight with a BMI below 23 because they eat healthfully, eating healthfully, sufficiently, and exercise regularly, right? So the object is not to take things that are appetite stimulants, and sugar, sweeteners, salt, and oil are appetite stimulants. Vegetable oils are 20% of the calories in the United States. And I'm saying they're addictive, and they drive overeating behavior, and they drive the storage of fat, and they prevent the breakdown of fat for weight loss. You can't even cut your calories low enough to lose weight once you're putting a certain amount of oil in your food, because the fats come into the bloodstream, it's driving fat storage enzymes and insulin. By the way, the lipemic load also affects the glycemic load. What I'm saying is this. Let's say you're a diabetic and you have high blood sugars. It's not just the glycemic load of the meal and how much white bread or white rice or how much sugar you ate in that meal that turns glycemic load. How much oil is in the meal, because the lipemic load, or the oil the fat in the blood, also interferes with the function of the insulin receptor. So insulin can't carry the sugar out of the blood anymore. So the sugar gets higher because of the oil content in the blood that's simultaneously there. So I've already told you now 2 things that make a person insulin resistant and cause diabetes, and inhibits the diabetic and maintains the diabetic problem with the diabetic, and that is body fat and the lipemic load of the fat in the meal that you just ate. As soon as you switch from oil as a source of fat to nuts and seeds as a source of fat, we're talking about walnuts, not walnut oil. We're talking about sesame seeds, not sesame oil. We're talking about an avocado, not avocado oil. We're talking about an olive, not olive oil. As you switch to the whole food, from the processed food, from the extracted oil, you change the lipemic load from a flood of calories in the blood to the fibers and the nutrients being present in the sterols and stanols that have anti-cancer effects and feed the growth of bacteria in the gut and create a biofilm that slows absorption of glucose and fat into the bloodstream. We create a different biochemical event when you eat the walnuts versus the walnut oil. And that's the secret to preventing extra body fat from developing on your body, is getting the oils out of your diet. Heated oils are carcinogenic, right? That's why the US Southern diet has the most heart attacks and strokes in the world, right? So we're talking here about some foods you shouldn't be eating, but now let's talk about some foods you should be eating, like green vegetables, which activate the immune system, the intraepithelial lymphocytes that lie behind the villi in the small intestines are the defenders at the gates of the castle, right? Our gates of our castle is defended by these interstitial lymphocytes that line the digestive tract. It defends us against toxins, against bacteria, against viruses, against poisons, against anything. So the body has the ability to keep stuff out that we don't want to come in, but only if you have a high intake of green vegetables, because this immune function in the aryl hydrocarbon receptors that turn on the development of these interstitial lymphocytes is dependent on substances in green vegetables, particularly green cruciferous vegetables, right? You know, this slide says 200 studies show that raw vegetables have the most consistent and powerful association with reductions of cancers of all type. And I have to upgrade this slide. It's an old slide. It's more than 300 studies now show raw vegetables have the most consistent and powerful association with reduction of cancers of all types. You should memorize that. Raw vegetables have the most consistent and powerful association with the reduction of cancers of all type, and that means, do you eat a salad every day as a main dish? One big salad at least once a day with lots of raw vegetables. Because I'll tell you how to build this anti-cancer salad that you're supposed to be eating every day. You put a lot of lettuce in, because lettuce and dark green lettuces are superfood. They're nature's richest source of sulfoquinidose that build a healthy bacteria in the gut. And then do you put cruciferous greens in there too, like arugula, baby bok choy, or kale, something that adds these cruciferous compounds. And then the onion or scallion that has the tremendous anti-cancer potential when you mix it. And third is your dressing on top of the salad made from nuts and seeds and not oil, which now you absorb 20 to 50 times as much of those nutrients because you chewed it well and because there's fat in the digestive tract as you're chewing that food, and the fat preferably comes from nuts and seeds. So is it like a walnut balsamic dressing? Is it a Russian fig with the fig vinegar and tomato paste and roasted garlic and and almonds or something or is it a orange sesame dressing with navel oranges whipped with cashew nuts and toasted sesame seeds and some blood orange vinegar? The secret is to make the healthy dressing to enjoy eating salads as your main dish for lunch, right? That's the secret to a nutritarian diet. Breakfast is easy. You have steel cut oats with some berries and flax seeds and unsweetened plant milk. Or lunch is really when you're out of the house. It's so important that you eat a salad, a bowl of vegetable bean soup, and a piece of fruit. When people say, okay, where do I start? What's the one change I make to radically change the health care of Americans or to improve my health? And I'm saying the radical change you make, the place you start is with your lunch. And we skeletonize the diet that if you have a salad, a big salad, a chopped salad with these things in it, and a bowl of vegetable bean soup, which you can make on the weekend with onions and mushrooms, and some fresh fruit like a mango or some figs or some berries for dessert, then you've got 3/4 of the problem licked right there, right? Vegetables protect the DNA, especially green vegetables. They prevent this cumulative development of methylation defects that eventually leads to the point where a cell becomes cancerous, right? And we study cruciferous vegetable intake like cabbage and broccoli, and there's a Chinese study on Asians showing whoever consumed the most green vegetables, most green cruciferous vegetables, lived the longest. So the healthiest centenarians who were living the longest with their full mental and physical capacity were people who had a high green vegetable diet. Now, green cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and kale and bok choy have an enzyme in the cell wall called myrosinase. See the myrosinase enzyme, that little packet in the cell? And as you're chewing that vegetable up, you're breaking open those cell walls, And the myrosinase enzyme is catalyzing a reaction with the glucosinolate in the cell to form the ITCs, the isothiocyanates, that prevent cancer. So the isothiocyanates, or ITCs, are most likely the most protective longevity anti-cancer compounds in a person's diet, but most people that eat vegetables don't get much ITCs in their blood or their urine. Because number one, they don't chew it well, or they overcook the vegetables and deactivate the enzymes. The trick is to wok the vegetables, don't make them soggy and overcook them. Eat them raw, whip them into a soup. And when you eat them in a salad, if you're eating arugula in a salad, get the most nutritional bang out of that by concentrating on chewing it to a liquid so you break open as many cells as possible, causing this chemical reaction to occur in your mouth, right? You get better you chew, the more isothiocyanates are in your blood. So the G bombs, again, stand for greens and beans and onions and mushrooms and berries and seeds, right? These foods for optimal health. We can throw a dart at any of those foods and show the power they have, like throw a dart at mushrooms. Well, studies show that people who consume mushrooms regularly have more than a 50% reduced risk of getting breast cancer, for example. Or seeds, which showed people who had breast cancer, who ate some lignans every day, a third of a milligram of lignin a day, had a 71% reduced risk of dying from cancer over that 10-year period they were followed. We're talking about dramatic protection from small amounts of these foods. A little onion, a little mushroom, a little beans in your diet. These things like mushrooms, onions, and garlic, berries and greens, inhibit angiogenesis, inhibit cancer cell replication, inhibit the cell's ability to go crazy and kill you, and inhibits development of laying down of plaque. Green vegetables not only are the most protective against cancer, but they're most protective against the body opposing putting down atherosclerotic plaque on the inner lining of blood vessels. They don't allow blood vessel damage with a high green vegetable intake. We have tons of autopsy studies on primitive peoples and people like the Catawba Island study, which they don't salt their food, they don't have heart attacks, and they have no high blood pressure in the most elderly people. The Camomamo Indians and the Amazon tribes who are separate from civilization, who don't salt their food and eat natural foods. An autopsy on their deaths, they have no plaque in their blood vessels. So we're talking here about that heart attacks are unnatural. Strokes are unnatural. It represents things we're doing wrong. Cancers are unnatural. We looked at the incidence of cancer through human history over the last 5,000, over thousands of years, from like the 13th century, the 15th century, the 17th century. We didn't see much cancer start to occur until mid 1700s, or some in the 1600s, when the first cancers that appeared in Europe were men who worked as chimney sweeps, who were inhaling smoke all day. They got increased risk of testicular cancers and scrotal cancers, but not necessarily breast and prostate cancer. Those being more prevalent didn't occur till after the Industrial Revolution, when people were able to get more processed foods and get more calories in. But of course, there wasn't things as enough sugar in oils and honeys and a lot of things. And calorie consumption back then, we couldn't get all those calories that people consume today. Now Americans have become like calorie consuming monsters. They consume like over 3,000 calories a day. I'm saying half of what we eat meets our needs, and the other half meets the needs of our doctors, right? You got that? So these high glycemic foods are processed foods, because when you're eating beans and squashes, they don't push a lot of sugar in the blood. You got to eat these high glycemic foods like French fries and white rice and white potato and white bread. I'm always saying the whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead, right? Don't trust things that are too white, like cigarettes, cocaine, right? White flour, white. But anyway, multiple cancers, diabetes, heart disease linked to high glycemic food. So let's throw some low glycemic food on the board. Let's throw some starchy food on a table and rank them by the glycemic load, by the amount of resistant starch, by the amount of fiber, and by the amount of protein and their anti-cancer effects. Now, what do you think we find? Well, we find that resistant starch, the starches that don't even cause any glycemic rise at all, are highest in beans and peas. And the fiber content is also highest in beans and peas. And guess what? The anti-cancer nutrients like inositol phosphate and the flavonoids that prevent breast and prostate cancer and colon cancer are also highest in peas and beans and legumes too. And protein's highest there too. The point is that we can score carbohydrates on a hierarchical scale. And if you're a 5'2" woman who has a low caloric need, and you only need like 1,300, 1,400 calories a day, you still want to eat those beans for their protein, but you may want to take out the bread and the pasta and the potato and the other things you don't need and the rice because they're not going to give you the nutritional bang of the bean. Eating at least a half a cup of bean a day is a formula for a low cancer, longer life. I can give you spend a whole hour talking just about beans alone, but they are super, and you should be eating beans every single day. Maybe a little at lunch with your salad or in the soup, and maybe a little bit at dinner too. So beans have these nutrients that protect against cancer, and even consuming twice a week bean lowered risk of breast cancer by 24% in a nurse's health study. And of course, a high glycemic diet dramatically increases risk of cancer. Now, we have to mention this concept of high protein diets and death. Very, very important. Because now we have more than 20 separate studies that show that in population studies, we followed the studies that look at hard endpoints, which is cancer, heart attacks, age of death. We look at age of death and how long people lived. We find a dose-dependent relationship between shortened lifespan, which means higher risk of cardiovascular death, and higher risk of cancer death, dose-dependent to the amount of animal protein you eat. More animal protein, more death. And the most fascinating part of these studies that now corroborate each other, because what I'm saying right now, since when this study appeared in Lancet, I think it was in 2018 or 2016. Let me move this and see if we're in date. Yeah, 2018. Since that study appeared in Lancet, there's been more than a dozen other studies that are larger, more people, 20 to 25-year follow-ups, and each study from different part of the world corroborates with the same information. Different researchers, different parts of the world, different populations, all show the same thing. More animal protein, more deaths, more plant protein, more lifespan, linking the intake of plant protein as the strongest parameter of long-term lifespan prediction. Wow, what is that? What is it about plant protein that makes you live longer? And sure, a nutritarian diet with lots of beans and greens and nuts is high in protein. You get about 25 grams of protein per 500 calories. That's more protein than most people are eating meat, because most meat diets are only about 18% protein. They're not even getting as many grams of protein as a nutritarian diet, because greens and beans and nuts are relatively high in protein. But why is the plant protein so protective? I think the answer is not only because it's plant protein, not because the animal protein raises IGF-1. The animal protein is so complete and goes into the bloodstream so fast that it spikes a level of protein in the blood as opposed to being fed in more slowly, which then creates more IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor 1, which works like insulin to promote growth, which is a growth-promoting, angiogenesis-promoting hormone. Did I mention what angiogenesis means? It means that angiogenesis means the growth of new blood vessels to feed the growth of fat. So insulin and IGF-1 accelerate or enable the growth of sprouts of blood vessels to sprout new tributaries, right? New vessels to get the fat to grow, to bring it oxygen and nourishment. And cancer cells also secrete angiogenesis promoting signals so it can glean a blood supply to promote its growth, because cells can't grow and metastasize and spread and cause death unless they have blood vessels bringing them nutrients and glucose, right? And I'm saying mushrooms and greens and onions say, no way, Jose. I'm not letting you get a blood supply. No way, Jose. I'm not promoting angiogenesis. I'm opposing angiogenesis. So the plant protein foods like greens and beans and nuts have anti-angiogenic properties. They have anti-cancer properties. It's not just the protein is plant protein, which eases the bloodstream slowly and doesn't promote IGF-1 and promote cellular replication and angiogenesis as much. It's also, there's anti-angiogenic factors in the plant proteins. Don't forget, green vegetables have hundreds of anti-cancer nutrients. Beans have hundreds of anti-cancer nutrients, right? Nuts and seeds have hundreds of anti-cancer nutrients. When you get, in other words, you're getting the protein packaged in with foods that contain rich phytochemicals and antioxidants, not in an empty package, because I'm saying a piece of chicken is like a bagel. Why am I saying a piece of chicken is like a bagel? Well, because they're both sources of macronutrients. The bagel gives you a lot of carbohydrate. The chicken gives you a lot of protein, but neither one gives you a significant micronutrient load. Where's the phytochemicals and antioxidants to prevent cancer in that load of calories? They're both high calories, low nutrient food. They're both examples of foods that do not give you a significant micronutrient load. That's the formula for a shortened lifespan. The more chicken and bagels you eat, the shorter you're going to live. The more green vegetables and beans you live, the longer you're going to live. Plus the fact, I'm saying a piece of chicken is like a bagel, because they're both hormonally unfavorable, right? Because the bagel is so glycemic, it pushes up glucose and insulin, and the chicken is so high in protein that it pushes up IGF-1. So I'm saying here, where's my slide locked? Excuse me a second. Okay, now it's working. That I'm just showing a few other studies on protein and lifespan here, and the fact that IGF-1, which is very correlates with animal protein intake, raises and is higher in studies than as pooled data shows that studies where people have higher blood levels of IGF-1, you have more cancer, breast cancer and prostate cancer. So we're saying lower levels extend lifespan, but not too low. We don't want the, because remember, everything can be too high or too low. So we get adequate protein so it doesn't get too low, but we're getting protein from plant sources, which prevents it from getting too high. That's the secret here. So you have decreased inflammation, enhanced insulin sensitivity is the goal, and slows aging of the brain and prevents cancer cells, because we need, in the witch's cauldron of chemicals and right, the witch's cauldron of ingredients you need to fuel cancer, you need to throw insulin in there high, you need to throw IGF in there, in there high, right? And you need to throw a lot of sugar in there, and you need to throw a lot of animal protein in there, and you need to obviously keep the phytochemicals and anti-cancer materials out. And now we're touching again back on the subject of nuts and seeds and heart disease, showing that all the studies, and there's more than 50, I published you could say, an overview report in a medical journal about a few years ago that used 50 references on nuts and seeds to show that all these studies show incredible corroborative evidence showing approximately 40% reduction in cardiovascular death from people eating nuts and seeds daily compared to people who don't. And in the Adventist Health Study 2, they compared the lowest quintile of nut and seed consumption, averaging less than half an ounce a day of nut and seed, to the highest quintile of people eating more than 1.5 ounces a day, showed a 40% difference in cardiovascular death in people eating relatively healthy, because the Adventist Health Study 2 is well known for the people who are generally living healthier. They don't usually smoke or drink alcohol. They exercise, they watch their weight, they're trying to live a healthy life. And among the differences of ones that eat a little bit of nuts to eat more nuts, we found even among that group a tremendous variance in lifespan based on the inclusion or exclusion of nuts and seeds. So all these studies show a dramatic reduction in all-cause mortality from people who eat nuts and seeds. And I'm particularly mentioning today this parameter of longer lifespan of eating sesame seeds and flax seeds and chia seeds and hemp seeds and making salad dressings or blending seeds and put it in your morning cereal and being conscious of eating nuts and seeds every day. And here's those studies I was talking about. Here's the meta-analysis of many studies showing 39% cardiovascular mortality. And there's the Adventist Health Study 2 at the bottom in 2018, showing a 40% reduction in cardiovascular death compared to the group with the lowest intake. And of course, we're talking about in the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study 2, because it's such an important study in the history of science, because it's not so many co-founding variables, because the people generally eat similarly, reduced risk of all quartiles, but you can see as you go up higher, how higher amounts, and whether it's semi-vegetarians or near-vegetarians or flexitarians or vegans or people who occasionally eat some animal products, still nuts and seeds became the strongest parameter predicting lifespan versus not. And we're talking about a little more in the diet, lowers cholesterol, the sterols and stanols in nuts and seeds bind cholesterol in the gut and bring it and push it out to the stool. Let me say that one more time. The sterols and stanols in nuts and seeds are such a powerful fat magnet that they suck the cholesterol out of the bloodstream, pulling it into the digestive tract, for elimination in the toilet bowl, in the stool, meaning that the oxidized LDL, which is the bad actor that causes heart attacks, is most attracted into the stool when you have a diet that includes beans and nuts and seeds, which suck the cholesterol the wrong other direction, right? Here's that study with over 50 references that I published in the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, showing the science documenting, an overwhelming amount of science documenting the protective effects on nuts and seeds against heart attacks and strokes and cardiac arrhythmias. Here's a couple of examples. Here's Martin, who was 266 pounds in near death. He lost 120 pounds in 1 year. If I just look at he was on 11 medications. He had congestive heart failure with peripheral edema. He lost 120 pounds. He's now 70 years old, normal body weight, no medications, normal heart rhythm, no blood pressure, no breathing issues. He got his health back from almost near death. Another person, Michael, same thing happened. He had heart failure in a hospital after a heart attack. Ejection fraction was so low, giving very poor prognosis. Matter of fact, he was in the ICU, barely surviving, hooked up to machines, right? And multiple cardioversions. The doctor touched him on the shoulder and said, they're doing all they could. They can't really help him much more. They brought the Nutritarian diet into the hospital, and he's weaned off his huge amounts of insulin. His diabetes went away first thing. Eventually, his blood pressure came back to normal. His heart healed. He began to walk again, and his heart remodeled. He came off of medications, 20 drugs, completely without diabetes. Just a couple of cases that show you that this is powerful stuff, even when people have disease, right? I've been doing this for almost, for like almost 40 years now. And it's been a blessing and really exciting to work with people and to watch diseases reverse and to get them off the addiction and the dependency on doctors, drugs, surgeries, angioplasties. People think, medical care means drugs and surgery. And I'm saying that lifestyle medicine is the most powerful type of care. That's why Eric Adams, the New York City mayor, reverses diabetes following the same principles here. And he was important and instrumental in making sure a lifestyle medicine office opened in every major hospital in New York. And I was one of the original founding members of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, that now we have tens of thousands of physicians who are practicing lifestyle medicine, and mostly in California, of course, but of course, because we see how effective this is, and the science supports lifestyle medicine 100 times more effective than drug-based medicine, right? We're talking about getting people to live healthier is the really answer to having a long, healthy life, not having access to medical care and taking more drugs. So more greens, more beans, more nuts and seeds shows dramatic lowering of the glycemic load, reversing diabetic parameters. Most people that come into my retreat here in San Diego to lose weight, or they get rid of their diabetes and high blood pressure in 3 weeks after being what they had it for 30 years. It's gone in 3 weeks, and they generally drop about 15 to 20 pounds the first month if they're a male, and about 10 to 15 pounds the first month if they're a female, right? So to review what we're saying here is your body is a protective, self-healing, self-repairing machine. Diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure are not normal process of aging. They're not predominantly genetic. You earn those things by what you eat and how you live. And the high phytochemicals from colorful plants, with regular exercise and sufficient caloric control to maintain an ideal body weight, then activates these longevity proteins like SIRT1 and AMP kinase, which prevent oxidative damage, prevent repair. And it's amazing, it's amazing how medical technology is advanced. So we can measure telomere length and biological age and oxidative damage and protective proteins, and we can measure the chemicals in your body. It's amazing what we can measure. We can measure if you have cancer. Decades before you can find it on a colonoscopy or a prostate or a mammogram. In other words, we have such incredible sensitive blood parameters today to show people that they're at risk. Not that I'm advocating that, I'm just saying that we can see and we can measure that when you eat right, these risks go away. When you eat wrong, when you eat more animal protein, especially when more high glycemic carbohydrate, and look at the American diet designed by Al-Qaeda, right, to kill us. Burgers and sandwiches and bread and pasta and meatballs and and pizza and all these things, combining animal protein with high glycemic carbohydrates and fried foods and oils. I'm saying you couldn't design a diet better to kill people had it been made for that purpose. That turns on cancer-promoting genes and lets people's life be a crapshoot. So I know I'm talking relatively rapidly, but I think you can go back, you can review this. I think you're getting I want to leave time for questions and answers too. And we could always talk more, but I'm saying here that when you eat in a standard American diet, your average age of death for a male might be around 78, for a female like 80. But you don't just die suddenly at those ages. You have a deteriorating quality of life. You put on medications, you lose your creativity and full memory and mental function, and you lose your physical capacity. You're no longer playing tennis and surfing and whatever you want to do, climbing mountains. You lose your quality of life and you lose your mental capacity before you die. You lose a tremendous amount of life. My experience with people eating nutritarian diets is they don't just live 20 years longer, they live 20 years longer with high physical and mental capacity, right? So we're talking about really a lot more added lifespan to the precious, beautiful life we have here on this planet. It really, all these people who've changed their diet have said a fog lifts from their brain. They're getting so much more pleasure from enjoying their life without fear of disease. And they live a longer, more pleasurable life where their later years become a source of time when they have wisdom and compassion and can enjoy their fruits of their labor, where they're not just getting older and suffering with medical tragedies to running back and forth to doctors and hospitals. So here's the prescription. Here's what I want you to do every day. I want you to eat about a cup of beans every day, at least a half a cup a day. Put some beans with both meals. Eat at least 3 fresh fruits a day, like fruit for dessert at every meal, especially berries and cherries, and eat frozen fruit. Right? Frozen organic berries. Eat at least 1.5 ounces of raw nuts and seeds a day. I want you to have seeds all the time, and certainly nuts and walnuts and other things too, but at least 1.5 ounces, like was shown in Adventist Health Study 2 to reduce cardiovascular death by 40%. At least 1 big salad a day, right? And with a dressing. You could do that. And dinner time, have cooked or walked vegetables and all kinds of mixed vegetables, cabbage and broccoli and onions and mushrooms and squashes, and make a vegetable list, maybe with the Thai curry sauce. Eat a lot of vegetables with cooked mushrooms and raw onion. You can eat cooked onion too, but eat both raw onion and cooked onion. But mushrooms, you mostly eat cooked. And of course, beans have to be well cooked and made soft. I recommend cooking them in a Instapot or pressure cooker, right? I actually put black lentils in it. Today I put it in an Instapot, turned it on, pressed the bean button, and walked away. I put 2 cups of lentils in there because I make it for the whole family. It's a lot of, we're all eating it, even the dog. I put it in his food too. But in any case, I put 2 cups of black lentils to 5 cups of water. And I just press the button. That's it, just press the button. And it cooks it, it shuts itself off. It's just crazy. It's crazy how easy this is. It's easy to eat healthy. They even have the washed salads in the healthy stores and in the supermarkets here. In California, you get like the boxes of like baby lettuces and baby arugula. It's already washed already. Just got to throw it in your plate, cut a tomato in, pour some of the dressing in, and put some beans on top or something. It's really, it's so easy to eat healthy here in California. Here's some examples of people with cancer. Here's Pam, who had a collapsed lung with 4 liters of metastatic ovarian cancer, fluid from ovarian cancer in her chest with a collapsed lung. They had to put a chest tube in. She received chemotherapy, but still the metastatic disease, because you can't really kill every cancer cell, given less than 6 months to live. She's alive now, 27 years later. 1997, this is like 29, 8 years later or whatever. She's still alive because these people don't get recurrence of the cancer because the escaped cancer cells are surveilled and killed by an optimal immune function. Here's Irene, who reversed her lymphoma with no treatment, no chemo, just healthy diet. It melted away. Here's Leo, who had metastatic breast cancer of the bones in 1995. Of course, refused chemo, but they said her type of cancer wouldn't be that responsive anyway. You know what happened? She got well. I was like so shocked. I had to repeat the bone scan a second time. I thought they got the patients mixed up or something. Irene is there's some other people there who also reversed their breast and ovarian cancer. Not reversed it, let me say. Karen Hartglass, she received chemo for ovarian cancer, but she's alive now 20 years later, right? We're not seeing these reoccurrences come back. Randy Carbone with an extensive invasive or premenopausal breast cancer, which is pretty deadly. And she also received chemo, but now again, no reoccurrences, 20 years later, doing great because then same thing with Sue, because they're following the program, which helps prevent recurrence of the cancer once it's treated. Here's an example of Sarah, who lost 100 pounds, said goodbye to multiple sclerosis, and Janet, who lost 100 pounds and resolved her multiple sclerosis. And this reverses autoimmune disease. And April, who lost 40 pounds and resolved her multiple sclerosis. And we see rheumatoid arthritis and psoriasis and lupus and multiple sclerosis go away. And my most recent book is called Eat for Life. And now I know I've been talking rapidly now. I'm going to stop the share, shut down the slides, and allow us to now communicate either with voice or through the chat box with you guys' help, and we'll take your questions.
Dr. Fuhrman, can you open the question and answer box? And
Yes,
read
I
the question?
can.
All right, do you want to just read them and answer them?
I only see, it just says, hi, everyone. Thanks so much for your patience. We'll get started in just 2 minutes. Any questions there? Oh, that's the webinar chat.
Yeah.
Close that.
Is the little Q&A box open for you? Can you do that?
Q&A box.
It's right next, couple boxes away from the chat box to your right.
Oh, I see
Maybe.
it. Yep, I found it. Thank you. I got
Okay,
it.
so the first one is asking if our slides are going to be made available. Would you be able to make these slides available?
Yes,
email
if you'd like, I can send you a Dropbox link and you can open the slides and make them available to the participants.
Okay, well, that's question number one.
Please, we'll put that they're copyrighted. Please do not share the slides with anyone or on the internet. Just make them available for your own and your family's uses, if you don't mind.
It's very kind of you. Okay,
Okay.
the next, healthy oils. Is there such a thing?
Not for overweight people. I mean, if you're LeBron James and you can eat 4,000 calories a day with all the exercise you're doing, and you have some room for those extra oils, and you're still consuming sufficient nuts and seeds and beans, and if you worked behind a plow in the field all day, burning all those calories behind a heavy plow, but most of us eat working behind a desk, it's hard to consume oil and not be overweight. And every 200 calories of oil you put in your diet in place of 200 calories of nuts, you just remove 10 grams of protein. Don't forget, if you ate the walnut instead of the walnut oil, the sesame seeds instead of the sesame oil, you'd be taking the fat with a lot of chemicals and proteins. And so you've lowered the protein content of your plant-based diet. So there's no such thing as healthy oils, but a person who has a high caloric need because they're a bigger person with a lot of exercise can still consume a small amount of oils with safety, but it's still, they got to consume their nuts and seeds as a major source of fats.
Thank you. So the next question is regarding our recordings. All our recordings are on our YouTube page. It just takes us a little while to upload them, but you will be able to watch this again. So if you want to talk about salt, that's the next question.
Yes, I mentioned SOS free, not sugar, salt, and oil. That salt is a leading cause of cardiovascular death worldwide. And the lifetime exposure to salt weakens the endothelial lining of blood vessels.
Oh, gross.
And so we're saying that in an Asian country where they eat more salt, but they eat less cheeseburgers and bacon, they have lower risk of cardiovascular death, but they have higher risk of hemorrhagic stroke. They have 10 times the risk of hemorrhagic stroke because there's inverse relationship between cholesterol and hemorrhagic stroke, because increased cholesterol thickens the basement membranes and causes atherosclerosis, which stiffens the vessels against breaking, against hemorrhaging from. So I'm saying salt doesn't just raise blood pressure. It also weakens the vessel wall over time, over decades, increasing the risk of having a brain hemorrhage. And it also excites tau protein development, causing Alzheimer's. And it also, so it's better to use, so it's better not to salt your foods and just get the sodium in natural foods. Or if you are using salt, only a few hundred a day extra over and above what's in the natural food. Don't use thousands a day extra. The American diet consumes 3,000 milligrams of sodium. Some Asian countries consume 5,000. We're having people try to strive below 1,000. The American Heart Association, of course, and the American College of Cardiology, people restrict salt when they have heart disease. And I'm saying, how stupid is that? You don't wait till a person gets lung cancer till you tell them to cut out cigarettes. You tell them to cut out cigarettes. You don't wait till a person develops heart disease and then you tell them to cut out salt. It's like everything is geared to what people want to hear. And yes, salt is iodinated. So we have to take, if we're going to eliminate all salt, and we're not going to be eating seaweed or seafood, then we have to make sure we have iodine in our diet. So we're taking a multivitamin or, with 150 micrograms of iodine in it if you're not exposed to iodine by cutting all the salt out. So it's easy to get over that, just a pinch of kelp or iodine in your multi, but it's better not to use salt if you're really going for maximal lifespan.
I have a
Very little,
question.
small amounts of it are okay.
I have a question, Paul.
Yes.
You really didn't mention whole grains like barley, oats. Are they not on your diet?
No, they are on the diet. I didn't mention them because they're not part of the G bombs. They don't have the powerful anti-cancer effects as the other choices, but I'm not saying the diet is only G bombs. There are other foods that are also good for you. Maybe not as much evidence of fighting cancer, but they still could, like for breakfast, you might have steel cut oats or oat groats with some flax seeds and chia seeds mixed in with berries and figs and,
There you
some
go.
some tart cherry juice on top or something. I love that tart cherry juice concentrate I buy. I buy this Montgomery organic tart cherry juice concentrate on Amazon, and I have I put some wheat germ in my oatmeal or my oats with the berries, and I pour a little of this tart cherry juice concentrate on, and I put the soy milk on top too. Yeah, and I love the flavor of to put the cherry concentrate in with the seeds, and I also put like the frozen berries in there too. But yes, I eat grains in the morning with breakfast, so that
Okay, thank you.
sure.
So that next question was, what about all the anti-nutrients in a lot of vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains, and legumes, such as phytates, oxalates, lectins, and the rest of that stuff there? What do you think about that, Dr. Furman?
That falls into the category of like internet nonsensical chatter, where people are trying to promote false information to get people afraid of eating a health of vegetables to sell meats and carnivore diets and things like that. So it's the argument these people on carnivore diets advocate, which we know that the keto and the carnivore diets have been now adequately shown and investigated in more than 20 long-term studies to cause shorter lifespan. And the argument, the theory they give of these anti-nutrients that you shouldn't be eating vegetables, it's just ridiculous. For example, phytates and lectins prevent cancer, make us live longer. True that if you ate nothing but spinach and beet tops and parsley, which are high in rhubarb, which are high in oxalates, you could be more like a form of kidney stones and not good. But we don't eat a diet of mostly raw spinach and rhubarb, and so the amount of oxalates found in lettuce and kale and broccoli are low. And we're not recommending people eat or their salad to be more than 20% raw spinach. So the oxalates and the phytates are pretty much a non-issue, and lectins are a non-issue because the beans are cooked well. It's only raw beans or undercooked beans that have a problem with lectins. And beans, we know, in more than 100 studies are linked to longer lifespan and lower rates of cancer. So any theory a person have about lectins in beans, like this cardiologist Gundy, are not borne out by the scientific literature, and he has no scientific evidence to justify his wild hypotheses to advise people not to be eating healthy food. So all this stuff is nonsense. It's untrue. The only part of it that could be given credence and some value is that as we age, our ability to absorb zinc goes down, and zinc is important for immune function with aging, particularly against pneumonia and against cancer. And it's true that the phytates combine zinc and interfere with the absorption. So even though we get adequate zinc on a plant predominant or plant heavy diet, the zinc isn't absorbed as readily as it would be from animal products. So it's advisable for plant eaters, for people who are vegans or near vegans, to be taking not just extra B12, but also zinc and iodine and DHA to make sure they achieve those levels of those nutrients that are optimized that they would have gotten had they been eating seafood like oysters and clams or whatever and shrimp. But we're watching ourselves with seafood too because of the contamination in the ocean waterways, because the filtering of all the garbage we're dumping leads to cyanobacteria that overgrow on the algae, which cause the BMAA, the BMAA toxin that can cause Parkinson's dementia syndrome. So people who eat more shellfish, clams, bivalves. And so as we move to a plant-based diet, we're saying, okay, well, what nutrients are you getting better in animal products and seafood that you're not getting with the plants? And those can be easily supplemented if you want to follow a vegan diet completely. You just take extra B12 extra zinc, extra DHA in an algae form, and extra iodine. The iodine obviously is from not using the salt, right? Not using the iodinated salt. Or seafood's high in iodine too. Clams and oysters are also high in iodine, but also seaweed. You can take kelp and seaweeds give you iodine. But if you're not eating seaweed either, then you should make sure you have a source of iodine.
Right, excellent. Do you see the question? You already kind of talked about seeds. There's one on synthetic creatine monohydrate. You see
Right.
that question?
Where is that? Yes,
It's-
yes.
You want to read that question and answer it?
It's this person loves exercise, lentils, and other nutrient foods. He also fasts 12 hours between dinner and breakfast. Great. He's doing everything good. That's great. He's trying to eat significant calories, 3 hours before bed. That's fantastic. His nettles tea is preventing benign PHH. Well, it's everything you're doing. That's terrific. And he's taking a little creatine. A little creatine is good if you're an elderly weightlifter. You know, if you're getting older. I'm 53, you don't really need it, but I'm 71. So I may be using it now as over the age of 65 or 70. Take a little extra creatine when I'm going back from the gym. A little creatine and extra taurine in there to give me a little bit of what's the word? Muscle response to exercise. I'm not sore the next day, so a little creatine's okay to take, a few grams of creatine. So it sounds like you're doing everything really great. You're doing a great job. Just don't forget to take a little bit of the omega-3s and the zinc and the B12 as well, as the creatine.
Excellent.
And
Next
also, you're
question
taking
is,
the nettles for prostate. Don't forget to take a little bit of green tea and curcumin from turmeric and green tea. Great for your prostate too.
all
But
right,
but
awesome.
congratulations on doing all these great stuff. It's so good to see a person taking such good care of their health. That's fantastic what you're doing.
There's one in every crowd.
No, the
Some
next guy
longevity.
too said, "Oh, okay. Let's see. Some of them claim
Someone,
do not get
yeah,
enough protein in their diet and recommend taking not whey protein. That's gonna push up IGF-1. If you're Yes, Americans eat so much processed foods like white bread and oils and sugar that it sucks the protein out of their diet. So I'm saying that green vegetables and beans and it's even intact whole grains. There's only 5 plant foods. There's fruits, there's vegetables, there's beans or legumes, there's nuts and seeds, and intact whole grains, just 5. The one low in protein, just one of them is the fruit. So unless your diet is too much fruit or too much oil or too much sugar or too much white bread, if you're eating really the natural foods, you're getting a good amount of protein. Like I'm saying, most vegan diets, which give you 15 grams of protein per 500 calories, might be a little low in protein because they're getting so much calories from oil and white flour products and sugar. Once we take those out of the diet, we're getting all beans and green, and they're getting most of our calories from nuts and seeds, is not regular oil, which have protein. The beans, don't forget, are high in protein. Then we get about 20% protein in the diet, not 10% protein like some vegan diets. And most meat-containing diets give you about 16 to 18% protein. So I'm saying the plant-based diet's better to get more plant protein from these high-protein plant foods, right? And most Americans are getting too much protein, but they're protein because they're getting too much food and they're eating too many calories. But as a percent of total protein out of their diet, they may be 15% protein or 10% protein, which may be too low as a total percent, but they're meeting their protein needs because they're eating too many calories. You want to get less calories and still get enough protein. So the percent of protein of total calories has to go up. That's where the beans and nuts and green vegetables come in too.
Question.
Yes.
Bread. I thought I heard you say in one of your videos there's only one bread in the United States you eat. That's
Ezekiel Food for Life bread. It's made from intact whole grains and it's very low in salt, and it's not the sprouted grains that are not highly ground into a flour, and it's a great taste. It's a great bread.
I eat it. Yeah.
The
What
Ezekiel
do you
food,
add to it, if anything?
a little slice of avocado. This morning I had a little piece of a Hass avocado mashed into the bread, and somebody put a little piece of tomato or onion on it with a slice of avocado. I kind of like make an avocado toast,
There you go. There you go. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, we're going through these questions here. Fasting mimic a diet with vegetables works for me. That's great. We're saying that the fasting mimicking diet is like eat a lighter dinner so you don't go to bed on a full stomach. That's the most important part of it, right? For some food addicts, though, who are overweight, the fasting mimicking diet leads to yo-yoing and obsessing about food on their low-calorie days, and they start overeating and binging and gets people in eating and binging. And remember, we want people eating consistently the right food every day, but if you can be good at that and still not binge on your off days and still stay with a healthy diet, then it's great. Okay, next question. What's the verdict on dairy? Is organic milk okay? Half and half in coffee. Well, the verdict is it's not recommended, but if you just have a little bit in a cup of coffee, you're not using that much of it, you know? If your other diet the whole day is good, you're not like drinking the stuff, you're just putting a little bit in like a couple tablespoons, right? So minimize it. Also following the factors of longevity from Okinawa, Italy, Spain, Gricinia, Yorba Linda, whatever. We're talking about Sardinia, we're talking about these are blue zones. And in the blue zones, they generally live about 7 to 10 years longer lifespan than average Americans do. And one of the blue zones is in America, right here in Loma Linda, California, right? It's Loma Linda, not Yorba Linda. But in any case, that's where the Seventh-day Adventists live. And I'm saying the nutritarian diet takes those healthy habits a big step over that, or in addition to that, that allows us to get on the average more than 20 years of additional lifespan, not just 10 years. So certainly we're not comparing a car to when buying a car, when we compare it to a junkyard wreck, which is the American diet. Being better than the American diet doesn't mean it's great, it just means it's better, right? But now we can use these scientific advances and looking at all the research data. I've spent my life reviewing more than probably 30,000 studies on longevity in food. And I'm taking the blue zone diet a step further with more specific recommendations to give you the more, to increase protection over and above what a blue zone diet can give you. But you're right, those are a good step in the right direction. Do you have
So we're about
salad dressing? Just let me say that I have more than 2,000 recipes on my website that are searchable with all types of recipes, desserts and dressing. So my books and my website has a huge amount of resources to help people achieve optimal health.
Yeah, we're about 10 minutes over, Doctor. You're also on Facebook as well. Am I right about that? We can follow you
Yes,
on
and I
Facebook.
also, if you look on YouTube or my website, you can watch the Eat to Live podcast, what Gary was mentioning with my daughter. I do a podcast also called the Eat to Live podcast. On our website, you can watch it without commercials. You hit the resources button, you can find podcasts. But if you go to YouTube, you can watch it with commercials, you know?
I
And
just
you're
want to
also
thank,
physically located here now in San Diego, which is relatively new for you, correct?
I'm opening an office here in Rancho Santa Fe called Longevity RX with my daughter, but I've lived in San Diego now for the last 6 years, originally from New Jersey. And I have to say, I love it here. It's crazy that I didn't do it sooner. And it's the greatest place in the world to live. And the food is great, and the climate's great, and the access to produce. It's just a pleasure and a beautiful scenery. It's just a blessing to be able to live here.
There you go.
well, thank you, Dr. Fuhrman. We really appreciate having you. We're very blessed to get all that information from you. I just want to remind people that are watching that our committee is always looking for new members. The application process opens in September. It ends in October. If you're interested in applying, please do. And if you're not interested in applying, but you have any ideas for programs you'd like to see, please reach out to the committee. Look at our webpage, CLA webpage. You can contact us that way. Follow us on Facebook and follow us on LinkedIn as well, please. Thank you, Dr. Fuhrman.
Take care, everybody. Wishing you all
Hey, thank you
best
very
of
much,
health.
sir.